Welcome to the February webinar for the Irresistible Church Network. Hope you're doing well. I see a number of participants joining us right now, and super excited to kick things off. See some people from Queensland, see some people from New Zealand, some people from New South Wales. Looks like a good group of people joining us from all across Australia and New Zealand. If I haven't had the privilege of meeting you in person, I would love to be able to get the chance to do that someday. My name's Jason Perkins, and I have the privilege of leading the Irresistible Church Network in Australia and New Zealand. And we'll talk a little bit more about our network here in just a moment. But with me today for the webinar is Clint Craig. Kia ora, Clint, all the way from Wellington in New Zealand. More specifically, he's from Lower Hutt or Upper Hutt, would you say, Clint? Upper Hutt?
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle between Lower Hutt and Upper Hutt, which is just north of Wellington, and a beautiful part of the world. And then all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, Ryan St. John with Aclara, a marketing agency in Atlanta who serves networks and churches all around the globe as kind of a hobby, would you say, Ryan? Because your day job is actually, your day job is serving corporations all across the globe. Maybe tell us a little bit about your agency as people are joining. And we're also going to drop in the chat, or I should say not the chat. We're going to start a little poll here. So if you would, go ahead and answer the poll question while Ryan tells us a little bit more about Aclara. Why don't you tell us a bit about the agency?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Perko. Great to be here. I founded the agency 23 years ago, which I always joke, it's like dog years. You got to multiply it by 7, and that's the reality of how long I've been doing this. So we have one part of the agency that is heavily on the healthcare and technology side of the world. So a lot of B2B, a lot of B2C marketing. And then, yeah, to Perko's point, we help support his network, and then a couple other networks throughout the world, and then a bunch of local churches, US, UK, South Africa, kind of all over the place. So yeah,
so good.
Happy to do it. Happy to be here.
Thanks for being with us. And Clint has been a recipient of the agency's what I would call philanthropy hobby, as they serve local churches and networks around the world. I'll share a bit more about my first introduction to Ryan in just a moment as we get started in the webinar. But his heart breaks for something really, really important. And what his heart breaks for has turned into an incredible act of service from his agency around the world, which I'm stoked and thankful for myself. I see in the poll, everyone in the network, joining the webinar, I see in the poll a number of people are dropping in the poll right now who owns the marketing in their church. So 60% are saying that it's a staff member, some people saying volunteers. So it's primarily a staff member, but also quite a few lead pastors are wearing the marketing hat as well, it looks like, from the attendee list. Let me, I'm going to share my screen as we get started today. Just want to share with you and remind some of you who are familiar with our network of what our network is really all about. Our network is very, very passionate about one thing, and our vision is simply this. It's to create or to see irresistible churches in every community of Australia, New Zealand, and into Asia now, which is super exciting. We've got some churches now in Korea, in Hong Kong, in the Philippines, Indonesia. So things are really expanding into Asia at the moment, as well as Australia and New Zealand. So super excited. We just are convinced. We're convinced. I actually heard this phrase, Ryan, from Clint Craig. This is who I have to give credit to. This phrase, we are convinced that every community deserves a church that is irresistible. And he used the word deserve. And I hadn't heard somebody say that before. We oftentimes say that we think every community needs at least one outward-facing church that is irresistible. But I love the word there that Clint used the first time I heard him say it. I wrote it down. I was like, no, that's right. There are people in every community that deserve a church that makes the gospel, the good news of Jesus, accessible to them. And that's what we're all about as a network. We rally around these 3 concepts: principles, practices, and preferences. We're really, really passionate about sharing principles that we think are universal and very transferable across cultures and even time. But we're not going to hold tightly to practices and preferences. There is a little bit of a misconception out there to thinking that, oh, if you're part of the Irresistible Church Network, then you must be a campus of or exactly like North Point Community Church in Atlanta. That couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, the variety of churches in our network is so vast that it really helps us to understand practices and preferences are important, but it's really transferable principles that we want to focus on. And we have 7 of them as a network that we focus in on. And they're actually listed in an order of priority for us. So the big idea we talk about is being outward facing. Then we talk about these 2 foundational principles of being strategically aligned or strategically organized. That means having all of our resources, whether it's facilities or funding or even human resources, everything we're doing as a church needs to be strategically organized or aligned around our mission, vision, and strategy. And then we talk about healthy leadership quite a bit. We believe that you can have the best vision, the best mission, the best strategy, but without healthy leaders, it's not going to make a difference anyway. So those are the big 3 at the top. And then our 4 core values under there: prioritize the next generation, be for your community, create irresistible environments, and be committed to relational discipleship. We believe that people grow best spiritually when they're connected relationally. Today's webinar, we're going to dive in just a moment, is really focused on these 2 principles. Outward facing. We want to be churches that are looking outside of our walls and are looking for people in our community that would be turning towards God. And the truth is, in our culture right now, especially in Australia and New Zealand, I'm hearing stories all across the countries of people that have no church background, no church experience, but they feel a prompting or a nudging. In fact, I met a young couple just 2 weeks ago. They were moving to a new area. They used Chat GPT because they felt a prompting to check out a church when they moved to that area. They found one of our partner churches through Chat GPT. They then found them on Google Maps. And then the young lady, Brandy, she said to me, I quote, "I stalked the church on Instagram to see if it would be fit for my partner and I." And then they came to the church. So outward facing. And then we want to be for our communities. We want our communities to know that we exist. That's going to be a big part of the conversation today. We want them to be glad that our church exists, and hopefully they would feel like they're better off because the church is in their community. So to really help us focus on what we're going to talk about today, I want to turn your attention to this short video that really describes what we mean when we say an outward-facing church. So take a listen to this.
Every week, someone in our community is wondering if faith has answers to the questions they're asking. They want to know if the church still has something real to offer them. They're hoping there's a place where they'd be welcome, even if they don't believe yet. That's why we're outward-facing. We are committed to removing all unnecessary obstacles for people turning to God. It's not about marketing, it's about mission. Jesus said he came to seek and save the lost. The early church made it their priority to reach people who were far from God. Acts 15 puts it this way: we should not make it difficult for those turning to God. But the truth is, churches naturally drift inward, toward insiders, toward the people who are already here. And the more we prioritize our own preferences, the harder we make it for new people to take a step toward Jesus. This isn't about being trendy or attractional. It's about being a church that unchurched people love to attend. It's being intentional in reaching people who are actually far from God, in creating spaces where it's safe to belong before you believe, and designing everything, every space and experience with the unchurched in mind. Because every community should have a church that looks and loves like Jesus.
So that's what we're all about as a network, especially as it relates to that principle of being outward facing. And so it's my privilege today to introduce you guys to a good friend, Ryan St. John, who's actually coming down under in a couple of weeks from now. Super excited to have you down under, mate. And thankful for your heart to serve churches all across the globe. I remember the first time we met, you said this to me. You said that if churches in the world don't know about a network like the Irresistible Church Network, and if a church leader didn't know about the network and they were aligned around this idea, you said that is a major problem, but it is a problem that in this day and age can be solved. Like, awareness shouldn't be an issue. And the same is true with the local church. Like, you would say, I think you would say, that a local church should have high awareness in their community. People should be aware in the community that your church exists. That's a very solvable problem in 2026. Like, there is ways to solve that problem. And so I want to just say thank you for allowing your heart to break for that issue, that problem that you think is very solvable. And thank you for not just having your heart break for that thing, but actually saying yes to try and help solve that for churches and networks around the world. So thanks so much for being with us, mate. Dive in. We're excited to hear what you've got to share with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Berko. I'm excited to share with you guys a couple different topics here. And you're actually right. It seems so obvious, but you think about even just consumer advertising, right? Is people can't buy that what they don't know exists. And so what I see more and more as I work with more and more churches is there is a whole community of people that would go to your church if they knew your church existed. And so solving just even that simple awareness strategy is really pretty straightforward. It makes it easier than ever now with digital and digital marketing. So to kind of dive in, just here's what we're going to talk about today. I'm actually going to give you guys a crash course in marketing, so to speak. There's these 6 questions that I think about every time I plan any campaign. It doesn't matter if it's for a network or a local church or a for-profit business. And so just helping you guys think the way that I think is going to just help make your campaigns more successful. So we'll kind of walk through all of those. Sorry, let me close this. The poll. So the poll popped up. The next thing is we're going to talk through some sample campaigns. So it's good to know those questions, what we're going to do, but actually to show you campaigns and how I then use those questions to build campaigns and target people. We'll talk about that. Recent successes, we're going to spend a whole lot of time here. So we've been working with the networks now for 3 years and been working with the local church now for almost a year. We've learned a lot in that period of that time span. And so I'm going to take you through some of those campaigns. I'll talk about what has worked for us in the past, what has not worked, some things to keep in mind. And then the rest of this is really about just kind of helpful things. I'll have some keys to success. And then after the webinar is over, when we send out the recording on the Irresistible website, you'll see a whole bunch of helpful resources. So I put together things like media planning guides and channel guides and stuff like that. So as you're building campaigns, you don't have to go research this. You can use a lot of these templates that my own agency has created over the years. So just kind of this quick crash course. Here are the 6 questions that I think about. What am I trying to accomplish? Like, what are my goals? How am I going to measure success? Who am I specifically trying to reach? And this could be a whole bunch of different categories we'll talk about. What's the best way to reach them? And when you think about digital, there are so many ways to reach different people groups, and it's beyond just what demographically or geographically where they may be, and maybe things like interests. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then once you reach them, what am I going to say to them? I think so oftentimes when I talk to churches and talk about marketing, and even like you think about organic social, they tend to think about it as just speaking to their own church. So you look at their social posts, organic social posts, and saying, hey, this Sunday, come visit us at 11 a.m. Well, if I'm an outsider, I have no idea what that means. I have no context to that. Like, that social post is meant for somebody who already goes to the church, not somebody who's new. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then there's always an action. I want them to take a step of some sort. It could be as simple as just remembering the brand. It could be as involved as registering for an event. So we'll kind of walk through each one of those. So business, you guys have to forgive me. I flip in and out of business and church. So I'll say things like business objectives, but objectives, always what am I trying to accomplish? And when you think about marketing, there are 3 objectives that marketing can influence. The first one is brand awareness. So we can drive awareness. Marketing can drive awareness of your church and your community. The second one is net new visitors. Marketing can influence who's showing up and how often they're showing up. And then the third one is really what I would call engagement for attendees is a third objective. So what are they doing? Are they participating? Are they showing up to service projects? Are they showing up to serve in the church? You can leverage marketing for that as well. Most churches where they're at is really the first 2 objectives. So brand awareness is they're just not known in their community. And we see this even for very large churches that think everybody in their community knows us. When we do research studies, quantitative and qualitative research, to just poll the community and say, hey, name all the churches that come to mind. Even for large churches, very small percentages of them actually can name the church by name. Net new visitors is probably the other place that people spend a lot of their time, right? It's great if people know us, but if they're not showing up, that's only so effective. So we want to get people actually in the door as a part of that. And so those are really the two places we spent a lot of our time over the last year, just kind of trying to move the needle on those. But it's important to have those as you go into your campaigns, and I'll show you why that's important later. But always start with, what am I trying to accomplish here? KPIs, how do I measure success? So I look at this in each one of those objectives that we just talked about, and I'm going to look at it in terms of both leading and lagging indicators. So as I go into a campaign, I'm going to say, okay, man, I'm going to spend money and time on this campaign. How do I know if it worked? The first thing I'm going to look at the top of the funnel is really impressions and clicks. So how many people saw the ad? How many people engaged with the ad? How many actually clicked on the ad and visited my website? If I have a lot of impressions, so I can show an impression, by the way, is just the number of times any person saw an ad. If I had 100,000 impressions that saw my ad and nobody clicked on it, I've got a problem. I've got to fix something at the top of my funnel to say, it's great that I'm reaching people, but I'm clearly not saying the right thing to get them to engage with my ad. The second part of that is really the lagging indicators. And so this is the stuff that I think we all think about, right? Is if it's digital, it could be things like followers or viewers of YouTube channels, but then ultimately kind of visitors that are within coming to the church on a Sunday. I've expanded my definition to some of the visitor stuff. Yes, first-time visitors. I think one of the things that we've learned is we may show an ad, we may get somebody to come to the church, after a few weeks of running an ad campaign, but they don't identify themselves as a visitor for weeks or months, or even in one case, 2 years as a part of that. So it's really hard to do marketing attribution when you show an ad to somebody and then they identify themselves saying, hey, 2 years ago, I saw an ad and I want to learn more about your church, right? There's a gap there. The other piece is, we'll talk about this with some of our campaigns, is special events. So we've done a lot of campaigns just around, like, for example, in the UK, we did an event around caroling. So it was a caroling event. It was like the weekend before Christmas, and it was open to the community. You just show up and just carol all night long, right? They had the largest turnout in the history of doing that caroling event, and a lot of that goes back to the advertising piece. So I would consider that visitors as well too, in terms of lagging indicators. Target audience, pretty straightforward. Like, who am I trying to reach with these campaigns? And I typically, when I'm building campaigns, I have multiple campaigns running, and I'm targeting different groups within that. So I don't just look at the general community and say, I want to say all of these things to everybody in my community. I want to be as personalized as I possibly can. So some of that comes down to things like demographics, right? Male, female, age, geography, stage of life is a big part of this. If you're trying to reach young families, that would be a target audience that I would have a separate campaign running from. But also interest and intent topics, things that, this is one of the things, Clint, you kind of did on the content side, and maybe you can just talk about that for a minute, is Clint did a great job of filming a whole bunch of kind of short videos around helpful content, so that as we were doing ad campaigns on any of those topics, people would see the videos that Clint created as a part of just being helpful to whatever stage of life they're going through. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of those videos you put together in the topics?
Yeah, I think we tried to do those just based around like felt need sort of things, sort of feeling overwhelmed. I'm trying to remember the different titles that we had, but each one was about anywhere from about maybe 90 seconds to about 4 minute little video, trying to give some real helpful content to a real wide audience. Biblical principles, or would tie back to the text, but would really lead with the hurt point, or that felt need that people had. And so it was nice and easy to do, utilizing stuff that we've done in church.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great program. It's such a great ad campaign. I think all the time about the number of people that I see literally go by the church I go to, Buckhead Church in Atlanta. They have no idea it exists, and their faces in their phones searching for answers to their problems. And so many times the church is never the one giving the correct answer, right? That's like, we know the answers to these problems. We should be a resource for that. And it just lowers the bar from showing up on a Sunday to this building you've never been a part of to actually meeting some of those felt needs that Clint talked about.
Hey, Ryan, I wanted to quickly interrupt. I just caught Clint say you repurpose some of the content that you already were doing on Sundays. So it's not like you're having to go and write scripts for brand new things. You could literally go into a series that you've just done recently about emotional health or whatever it is. You mentioned feeling overwhelmed, or maybe it's a marriage or a family series or a finance series or whatever. And you can actually you're using parts of that content to create these short forms and scripts for those videos that you're filming directly for these campaigns, it sounds like.
Yeah. We didn't steal it from the message. Like we refilmed it, but like the content was already there because it was, we just try to say it in a more condensed or easy way.
Yeah, but you're not having to come up from scratch.
Yeah,
repurposing content even though it's filmed directly for those campaigns, for that context. And
Yep.
by the way, if you have a question as we're going through, please drop those in the chat. We're going to hit up Ryan and Clint later on for any questions that they have related to what we're talking about in the webinar. Quick question that popped up for me, Ryan. Percentage of the community that was aware of North Point Community Church. So they did their own study and they were shocked by how unaware the community was, because we're talking a very large church, 40,000 people on a general week across their campuses and things. What was the percentage that they found?
I was just trying to remember that. I don't remember the exact percentage, but it was incredibly low from what their expectation was.
It was 14%. 14% of their community were even aware that their church exists. So just barely more than 10%. So, what is that? 86% of their community completely unaware that one of the largest churches in the world is in their neighborhood. That's pretty startling.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and I think, for even some of the smaller churches we work with, I think they come to the table knowing people don't know they exist. And the question is, well, how do I change that? And then that becomes the obstacle. So two different problems, right? They similar solutions, but two different problems as a part of that. So strategies, tactics, and channels. So this is kind of, there's a lot kind of on this slide that I'll unpack. So I always think in terms of marketing strategies that we're going to leverage, the tactics that are going to support those strategies, and then the channels that I'm going to use. So a lot of what we focus on now for churches is obviously around digital marketing. And when you think about digital marketing, it all falls within these kind of three lanes. Search, so if you think about things like Google Ads and search engine results, AI assistance would be a part of that, like Copilot and Claude and all of that. Social, think about obviously all your social channels in terms of Snapchat and LinkedIn and Meta and all those kind of things. And then web app is kind of that last category. And web and app is this much bigger reach. So if you think about search and social, you've got to be on those platforms in order to see those ads as a result. Web and app, when it comes to digital marketing, is literally the entire web. Anywhere people go, they check their weather, news, sports, favorite publisher site, we can display ads to those individuals when they're on those sites as a part of it. So it's much greater reach than some of these other like search and social as a part of that. I'll show you how we use that as we go kind of later on in the presentation. A lot of what we're going to do is going to be paid social. I should have web app up there as well. I think this one is interesting. You think about a lot of stuff obviously happening in around Meta. Meta is great in terms of interest targeting. So if you want to target young families, for example, Meta is a great way to go for that as one of the channels. Facebook and Instagram, but I'm even going to skew within that. So you think about Facebook and Instagram, and Facebook is skewing older, Instagram is skewing younger. And so I may, even though I'm using the Meta ad platform, I'm going to pick and choose which ads I show on which platform is a part of that. The other example that I'll kind of bring up now is actually goes back to you. I was just on a status call today with Mindy on his team, and they were talking about how they've been trying to hire basically a next gen pastor, but they were talking about, hey, we're trying to fill this position. What's the best way to fill this position? And we ran some ads last year on Meta as a part of that. It was interesting when I talked about, we had a lot of really good impressions, kind of minimal click-throughs, and then not a lot of engagement in terms of applications. And so one of the things we were even talking about today was leveraging LinkedIn as a part of that. I think it's interesting when I talk to different countries and different ad platforms, a lot of countries will say, we don't really use LinkedIn. Like I hear that from the Brits a lot. And it's interesting. You just try to leverage a channel like that. And if it's the right audience with the right objective, it can still be really effective. And in fact, in the case in the UK, we ran ads specifically for webinars to lead pastors on LinkedIn. But we got the biggest response rate from that platform, which was totally opposite of what most of these leaders were thinking about in the UK. So kind of a good example of that. This type of stuff, some of those guides I have at the end, those guides will walk you through identifying strategies, tactics, and channels. So those will be helpful as a part of that. Messaging strategies. So this is kind of the next piece is, what am I going to say to them? As an agency, we have this core belief as an agency is that people buy emotionally and justify their buying decisions intellectually. Most, if not all, the advertising, maybe brand would stand outside of this, of the work we're going to do has some kind of an emotional hook to it. It should make them the viewer pause or laugh or smile or maybe feel a little sad. That's not a bad thing, but have some kind of emotional response to the ad that you're running. And when I get them to click, that's when I back it up with this intellectual justification piece. So give them a reason. Now I've hooked them, they've come to the site. Now there's something on the website that gives them a reason to attend. Being creative is really important with this. It's funny, I'll have clients from time to time that'll say, yeah, we don't believe in that core principle. We just need to straight up say, come to our church on Sunday. And so we'll run both sets of ads, the creative ones that follow this principle and the ones that are straightforward, and see which ones perform. 100% of the time over 23 years, the creative ones outperform the ones that are straightforward. Super, super valuable principle there. In terms of what I'm going to say, it's going to depend on what the objectives of the campaign are and where they're at within their, what I would call buying journey and faith journey. When I think about very top of funnel people who are far from the church, I'm obviously not saying, hey, come to our baptism service this Sunday, right? That's farther along the path than where they're at. I'm looking for easier entry points, and you'll see these in some of the campaigns. Things that are like events on non-Sundays, daddy-daughter days, good example of that. Pretty effective at the very top end of that funnel of just introducing them to the concept. It lowers the bar. It's not about Sunday worship services. Kind of a quick slide just on communication strategy. So the way that I always think about how I'm running campaigns is I always want to lead people down a path to the point that they engage with the church. This takes time. This takes time based just even starting from cold, but it also takes time depending on where they're at in their faith journey. So always start with awareness. It's like we said at the top of this, right? Is people can't come to your church if they don't know it exists. So a lot of the work that we do is always about pushing brand awareness. We know that it takes 7 to 9 touch points before anybody takes any action. Like click on the ad the first time, 7 to 9 touch points. That just takes time to build up. So building awareness is really the first part of that. Understanding. This is where we go a little bit deeper to start to say, hey, here's who we are. Here's what we're about. Here's what we're for. It's kind of, Perko, you mentioned stalking the Instagram page. Such a great example of understanding it. This is what people are going to do. They're going to go to your digital properties like social channels, your website, and they're going to check you out. If your website doesn't look good, if it's not easy to use, if your social, the last post you had was from 2 years ago, it's going to affect this ability to drive that understanding piece. They want to see if they align with the way you think. And is really kind of that first visit. It's like, hey, now they're ready to show up, maybe to an event, maybe to a Sunday morning, but it's kind of that first step they take that we always want to get to, but we don't want to just end it there. We really want to move into this place of commitment where they're coming back again and again and again. And some of that is about just continuing to run different ads to keep re-engaging them into the stuff that your church is doing in your community. Budget allocation, I kind of was put this out there. These should be Aussie dollars, sorry, but $100 to $500 per month is a good place to start. A lot of clients I have, a lot of churches I have, they'll start at about the $1,000 a month as a part of it. You don't have to spend $10,000 and $20,000, right, as a part of this. Like you don't have to think that big as a part of it. A lot of that is about being really focused on who you're targeting. So don't target, for example, all of Australia, right? You probably wouldn't do that anyway. Target within a 30-mile radius of your church. It just makes the dollars go farther. The other piece of this is just avoid doing too many channels at once. So not enough budget in the right place is going to have a negative effect. If I took $500 and split it 4 ways, it's not going to work. Campaigns don't work. It could be the best message in the world with the best targeting. It's just not enough spend to actually make to move the needle as a part of that. All right. So kind of this next section, we're going to get into some practical examples as a part of this. I really just took those last few slides about those 6 questions and put it kind of within this grid and how I think about it. And then below that, you'll see some ad examples as a part of this. So campaign ideas. So one campaign idea is, like I said, brand awareness. This is always important. Again, they can't visit your church if they don't know you exist. What I'm going to try to drive is impressions. Any campaign you set up, any platform, they're going to ask you, what are your objectives? It could be website visits. It could be form fills. It could be number of impressions. This one's going to focus on, I want to reach as many people as I possibly can with the budget that I have. And really, I just want to drive the brand that we exist as a part of that. You'll see my targeting in terms of target audience is pretty broad. I want to try to hit 18 to 65-year-olds within 60 miles of the church. For you guys, that might be smaller, might be wider in terms of how far people are willing to go. And I'm really going to drive home kind of this messaging around what their tagline is at church. So this is Journey Church that's located in Kentucky. We run these ads all the time. We'll change out colors, we'll change out photos, but I am constantly pushing that Journey Church brand and that tagline out there across web just so that it's always front and center. It's interesting. My goal here, like I said, is not to get people to show up. My goal is just that they see the brand. It's been interesting to me over the last almost year how many people see a brand ad and show up to the church because of just a simple brand ad. Those are the kind of the segment of the population that's open to church. They want to go to a church. They just don't know which one to go to. Like they don't even know how to find the right one. And the fact that you're actually present is like, well, I know about them. Let's try it. I mean, it's pretty easy in that piece. This one is interesting. Campaign ideas in terms of driving that new visitors is a part of it. One of the campaigns that Journey had is this idea of be known for something good. So they do a lot of things for their community. It's one of the 7 distinctives. So being for your community. So they do a lot of work in the community in terms of service opportunities. And this is one of those ways that I just lower that bar. It's like, hey, you don't have to come to church on Sunday. Come to one of our service opportunities. We do them on a quarterly basis. Just show up and volunteer with us for an organization or community that makes a difference. This is a great way that you can borrow some brand equity, by the way. So you look at some of those nonprofits that you guys engage with. It's an opportunity for them to post about you to post about them. And they will have a strong, they'll have strong equity within the community. And so by posting in and about them, it just helps the church overall. Kind of one more here. This is along the same lines that Clint, that you talked about in terms of the helpful content. You'll notice that when we create the designs for these ads, I'm using the mark, so that kind of the arrow in the background, but I'm not using the full church name. I want people to get hooked by the content and what we're talking about. And I don't want them to be distracted by the church name, but there's enough there to draw parallels. This is enough of a connection for them for a visitor to tie the two things together, or for a viewer, I should say. All right, let's get into some other campaigns. I'm going to kind of talk about some of these other categories. The first one really being just brand and how do we drive brand awareness. You can see Lifeswitch's ad kind of right there in the center as a part of just driving awareness. Like I said, we want to focus on brand and the tagline. I try to minimize any kind of CTA or call to action. I'm not asking them to sign up. I'm not even asking them to visit. I just want to keep the brand out there front and center as a part of that and keep driving this core message. We do a lot of work with A/B testing as a part of this. So if you look at Transform, on the left side, we just started working with them. They're out there with you guys as well in Australia. So different taglines, different photos, and we're actively testing to see which one resonates better with the community. If neither perform, then we kind of throw them both out after 30 days and we run some new ones, which is kind of an important point. Is when you think about digital advertising, we hit this point of ad fatigue at about 30 days. So every 30 days, you should be switching out your creative, because people will start kind of tuning it out. They've seen it before. It's a part of that. Next one is really around series. So what series do you have coming up? Typically, the way I use these ads is what's called retargeting. If you guys have heard of retargeting before. If you think about all the brand ads that are going out there just trying to drive awareness of the church, somebody clicks on that ad, they visit your site. When they leave your website, the next ad I want them to see is not the brand ad, because they've already seen that. I want them to see an ad that helps them take the next step, and series ads are a great way to do that. So what's the next series you guys are focused on? It's a great way to repurpose the content you already have, avoid ad fatigue, but it's also a great way to dive into some very specific demographics. So the ad on the far right there about the 3 things nobody told you about relationships. This is a series, it's a 5-part series that's actually going on right now. We're using this ad to specifically target a very narrow radius, about 2 miles, or actually about a mile, around a university system. And we're running these ads on Snapchat. So we're trying to hit like the 18 to 22-year-olds that are going to college, where relationships are a big part of what they're focused on. While it's a series for everybody, I'm trying to specifically move the needle with that college age group. And this is a great way to do it. It's amazing, by the way, from a Snapchat standpoint, in terms of platforms, how effective that platform is at driving engagement from like 16 to 25-year-olds. It's probably one of the most cost-effective platforms that are out there, and it's probably one of the most effective ones for that demographic. One-time events. This has been something that I think maybe I even just fell on, but we've discovered has been really, really successful. And so by one-time events, I mean things that are sometimes not on Sunday even. There may be something even outside of the church and the community as a part of that. They may even be things for your community that are really effective. Things like you see the caroling services over there on the left. I was talking about that earlier, UK-based church. They do this carol services every single year. It's never on the service time for Christmas. The entire community is welcome. We did a whole bunch of digital advertising around this. And yeah, they ended up with more people that carol service than any year prior as a part of that. I just think it lowers the bar. It just makes it easier. It's not just showing up Sunday morning, which is important, but this is kind of a first step to take before they actually walk into the church doors on Sunday. Did a lot of this with just Lifeswitch, with Clint, with you and Christmas as a part of that. This was really interesting. And just raising the bar and kind of awareness of the stuff you guys are doing there. And maybe just talk a little bit about some of your Christmas services and what you guys did there.
Yeah. So we just have, real community-focused Christmas services with a whole lot of festival stuff happening outside after the service. And we just really wanted to see more and more people in Hutt Valley know about it. And so we had a registration page that we asked people to register so we could just track the numbers across the different services to make sure we get even numbers across all of them. And we filled up all 3 of our services, which was brilliant. And I think
That's phenomenal.
right, how many were coming through the ads and stuff because of the Google form and that was used.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. That whole registration form thing, I think, is such a key part of this. I think it's worth trying it both ways. I was wondering if people would be willing to fill out a registration form, and I mean, I think you proved it. It's like people were fine with it. They were happy to fill that out and provide some of their information. I think that's true. That family Christmas experience, kind of the next one over. This was a kids event leading up to Christmas. And it's really easy to get young families and kids, young families, not just kids, young families to specific events, especially outside of the church. This particular event, they did a registration form as well, and they ended up with 35 new people, new families that they did not have in their database register for this event and show up. This is one of their best attended events last year. Daddy-daughter dance, I put that up there because I think it's another great idea. My only call out to this is I always love talking about my failures. This was a massive failure. And the reason it was a failure is because there was a dance recital happening the exact same night. And so all the daddies and daughters were at the dance recital, not at their event. So special events are great, but maybe obvious, like check the community calendars, like what else is going on that you're going to compete with. I also threw this in here just in terms of just weekly events. So this is these guys every Tuesday, they do kind of a little babies group or a toddler group as a part of it. This is great just to stay in front of young families, like day in and day out. The one-off events are great. But if you miss the one-off event, then what else do I have to communicate with you? So if you guys are doing anything kind of reoccurring, this type of stuff is great. I think it's just a way to, again, just stay in front of that community. I'm going to talk a little bit faster now, just so we're good on time. Keys to success. I'll cover these pretty quickly. Alignment is a key part of that. So those different questions I had, it's really important to answer those questions for every campaign you do. If there's ever a reason a campaign fails, it's usually because something is wrong with the alignment of those 6 questions. Is advertising on Facebook trying to reach college students? It's not going to work. So alignment throughout that process is really important. Signal to noise. This is really important just in terms of what are you communicating to your community, and making sure that you're always kind of on message or on point, and making sure it aligns with the target audience you're going after. Again, talking about the baptism service to somebody who's not a Christian, it's probably kind of a big, it's going to come across as noise to them and not signal. Consistency. This is one of those things that, I know even corporate clients, they're always like, okay, we're going to start a campaign today and we're going to see results tomorrow. It's like, no. I typically am running ad campaigns for a minimum of 90 days before I make decisions to continue them or not. And it's important to be committed to this year round. Your advertising should never go off. As soon as your advertising turns off, people start to forget who you are, and you're starting that awareness curve all over again every time you do that. Planning ahead. This is key just in terms of having the assets ahead of time for what you're trying to do. We try to have everything ready to go for a campaign a week, maybe 2 weeks before it's launched as a part of that. I think, Clint, you do such a great job of just pulling together assets in time, repurposing assets you already have, sermons, whatever that is. That makes it easier for marketing. I think one of the things we learned is, maybe this is true of me in the agency, but I am always asking these guys for more and more assets as a part of that. There is no limit to how much I'll ask for. So planning ahead to have enough time so not everything is a rush is a really important part of that. Brand ambassadors and UGC, user-generated content. We are just now starting to get into some of this that I think is super valuable. I'm going to use that relationship series as an example. Instead of it always being the LP, XP, something along those lines, we're actually using people from within the church. And in their case, we're actually using university students to talk about the series and then to invite them to come meet them at the church. It just kind of gives that friendly name or that friendly face as a part of that. It's like, oh, I can see myself in this person. I can see myself in this ad. This is a person I can go ask for or talk to or find at the church on Sunday, just to make it easier to approach. This piece of it, especially on platforms like Snapchat, it makes or breaks campaigns. I kind of talked about this quality of digital home. So when I think about that, I think about all your social channels, your website, making sure you're frequently posted on social channels, make sure you have a lot of great photography and video out there, making sure your website is easy to use, easy to navigate. And it's just, in a consumer world, even though we're talking about church, when you think about consumer world and think about a digital experience of Apple, you deal with Apple, they're setting the bar, they're setting the standard for my expectation on what this should look like. We don't have to be Apple, but we got to be a lot closer than we are sometimes to match that experience. And then measure and adjust. This is true of every campaign we do for every client. On a weekly basis, we are making tweaks and adjustments to campaigns to improve performance. You're always pulling data in. There's no shortage of data in advertising these days. look at the data, leverage the data, and use it to change your campaign to get more out of it. I think this is my last slide. Special considerations. Since Perko, you mentioned this, that was such a great leeway in terms of ChatGPT. This is becoming more and more prevalent by the hour. But what we see happening is exactly what you described, is what's called one-click buyer journeys. In the old days, people would go out and do searches. They would build a list of companies or churches they wanted to check out, and they would go kind of through this buying process. What we're seeing now is that people are going to AI assistants like ChatGPT, putting their prompt in. The first one that comes up, they're like, I'm going there. They won't even consider number two, number three. There are some different platforms that I'll put in some of those documents that are super helpful in improving if and where your church shows up with an AI assistant. Scrunch is one of them. The other one is Noble, but these are great platforms that are super inexpensive that really do make a difference and make sure your church shows up within those search results. And then negative posts. As much as we all hate negative posts, I still see this. I feel like anytime you do advertising, it starts to attract people that may disagree with you. So just be ready for that. I think some of that depends on who you're reaching and what content you're putting out there. I think what's important here is that you don't ignore them. You do kind of a pretty general response to say, hey, thanks for reaching out to us. I hear what you're saying. I'm going to send you a DM or a direct message, and we're happy to take this conversation offline. Show other people in the community that you're not just ignoring it, that you're willing to address it, but you're not going to address it in a public forum. And then I already talked about helpful resources, kind of last slide. All of these documents you guys will have available that just helps you guys plan your advertising campaigns and marketing campaigns.
So good. Ryan, thank you, mate. So helpful.
Yeah.
And I'd love to go ahead and bring Clint on as well. We'll spotlight Clint and you both. And just ask, Clint, you've been working with Ryan in the agency now for a little while. How would you describe the impact that has happened at the church from just paying attention to and putting some resources and efforts behind these strategies?
Yeah, I guess it's so some of it is hard to track, but what we have seen is we are definitely having like the best number of new people who have come along to church. Just we're not a massive church, so but every week we have red bags that we give to new families, and it's awesome when you see all these red bags going around. And yeah, the amount of times you do ask people, how did you hear about us? Online, and they don't often give you as much specific stuff, but it's like, yeah, that would have highly likely come through one of those ads and that brand awareness and stuff that's going on.
Yeah. And
so we've definitely seen it happen.
Newcomers, that the biggest impact you're seeing is new people checking out the church and then saying to you that the way that they found you guys was online, and you've seen that just increase since these strategies have rolled out. What about the impact on your team as far as clarity of what they should be doing, as opposed to, like, I know a lot of churches are like, oh, we're trying to be more active on socials, or we're trying to be more active on whatever. Like, that's the phrase I hear a lot, is we're trying to be more active, but oftentimes it's not very strategic activity. What's the impact been like for your team?
Mindy's always been pretty consistent, but it's probably helped. We've been fortunate that she's driven it for us a lot. But I think in particular, the other area it has helped us is trying some creative approaches in these spaces around trying to fill a key staff role, or do some stuff going, what some different avenues we can go down, and what some ways we can try something that's not just the run of the mill, to find good applicants.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And if I could just add to that, Perko, so I think one of the things too that's been really helpful for us in working with Mindy is, while Mindy's been doing a lot of the organic social posts and us doing the advertising, just being able to align those themes and those concepts is really helpful, just in terms of trying to turn up the volume overall within the community. It's like, okay, I saw an ad about this particular series, and I see a social post about that. It's like, okay, we have some alignment there. So I think that's been at least helpful for us in the advertising side.
Ryan, tell us more. You said organic posts aligning with advertising posts or the paid posts. For those that aren't familiar with the two concepts, just explain those two things for people real quick.
Yeah, so the easiest way is to just think about Meta, right? Is you have the organic Facebook or Instagram posts that you would push out there, like on those channels that you just kind of put on your page, your specific page. And those are no cost, right? You just kind of put those messages out. The other side of that is then we can also advertise on those same platforms. And whereas the posts you guys would do go on your pages to your followers, I can use their same platform to take your post and to show it to people who have never been to your page before. And that's kind of more the advertising side.
Yeah, no, that's great. Ryan, when you've been working with Lifeswitch or with Transform Church, I know you've got a few churches in our network that you're working with directly. What's the biggest thing that you wish churches knew from the learnings that you've had in working with these churches that you've like, what's the thing you're like, oh, I wish that they knew, but this seems to be the thing that we're overcoming a hurdle or a roadblock each time?
That's a great question. I think probably two things. One would just be planning ahead. So I think just having assets and planning your series out far enough advance that marketing can be effective. If I think about a series, I want to start promoting that 4 weeks before the start of it, which just backs up all the things like your graphics and your videos and all that kind of stuff, another 4 weeks on top of that. He told me to say something about Clint with this particular one, but I'm not going to do it. So Clint does a great job of that. We're getting better with that. I think the other thing, like I said, is just expanding beyond just kind of the Sunday morning services. If you think about some of those other things you can do in the community in those kind of one-off events, man, those just seem like, when you think about the flywheel of marketing and advertising, doing some of those things just seem to give it a harder push, is when you can kind of just lower the bar of engagement.
That's good. That's really good. All right. I'd love to see if anyone has any questions. We'd love to answer any of those questions. Just pop those in the chat. We've got time for probably just a couple of questions. If you would drop your question in the chat, that would be super helpful. Clint, can I ask you, while people are putting questions in the chat, financially, budget-wise, what have you guys budgeted for regular ads, that kind of thing? What, just tell us, like, is it a certain amount a month? What are you currently budgeting?
Yeah. Well, Ryan's helping us with that at the moment, so we've been very, very blessed. But yeah, I think it would definitely, like, when you're seeing the results of it, I think you're like, what Ryan's saying, $100 to $500 a month. I think like that's very achievable, which doesn't. I think yeah.
Do you want to speak into that, Ryan? Budgets, like what people should be thinking about? You said 100 to 500, but
yeah, 100 to 500 is a good starting point, especially if you're trying to manage just overall budgets with that. I am typically starting campaigns around 1,000 a month as a part of it, and then we'll either ramp that up, scale that up, or scale that down based on the things that are happening within the performance of the ads, but other events as well. So a good examples are, like, obviously leading up to Easter. I know we're going to talk about that. Leading up to Easter, like the month before, I'm going to start really ramping up those budgets for 30 days because it's an important event, and then I'll kind of return back down to normal as a part of that.
Yeah, okay. So speaking of Easter, I'd love to hear, Clint, Ryan, your strategy for Easter this year. What's the strategy that you're pushing for? And are you ahead of the game? Are you got your stuff ready to go early enough, Clint?
We're in a bit of a funky thing this Easter in that our building's doing a big makeover and stuff. So we're actually out at Easter having to do something totally random. But I know the week of Easter, we run a big kids camp that we have about 300 kids in the community come along to, so access to 300 families. So we are just pulling together now a series that will start on the week after Easter. That's really designed around felt need to, one, because we've got that captive audience of all the kids that came to camps, families. But I think, that'll be one that we'd really like to target through social media as well, because it should have that wider appeal. Right off
Ryan, what would you be suggesting to someone like Lifeswitch if they were, able to be in their building? And I know you've got unusual, extenuating circumstances, that kind of thing, but what would you be suggesting at this time of year leading up to Easter?
Yeah, so we are just now actually getting into Easter. So we're looking at launch campaigns as early as actually March 1st. So that's less than 2 weeks away. And at that point, it's kind of just general awareness. We've got a couple of churches that are doing some stuff that are content related that kind of support the Easter story overall that we're going to run for 2 weeks before we flip into, hey, come visit us on Sunday. The other thing that I'll throw out there that I think a lot of churches, I think in the US do, is they'll do kind of like egg hunt, like kids events in and around Easter. So we're doing a lot of promotion specifically around that, especially, the week before Easter is a part of that. It's like, hey, you can get all the families to show up, and then that becomes your time to invite them to the service kind of the next Sunday as a part of that.
Yeah.
But typically about 4 to 5 weeks out, we're doing promotion around this.
Okay. Starting the beginning of March then. Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's super helpful. All right. We're going to go ahead and wrap up our time together. Just want to say a huge thanks to Ryan, and thank you, Clint, for your time. Thanks for your investment in these leaders here in Australia, New Zealand, and parts of Asia as well. I do want to just mention we have another webinar coming up next month, and so be on the lookout for that. Ryan will be sending out the recording of this after the the webinar. For those that have attended and others that have registered and weren't able to make it today, I got several messages actually from people saying, is this going to be recorded? They wanted to catch up on it. So yes, we'll be sending out the recording and all of the slides and those other resources, Ryan, that you mentioned on the front end that will really be helpful for churches. I also want to mention, if you have follow-up questions or you get into those documents or things, please reach out to us. You can reach out to us. We'd love to connect you with Ryan or someone from his team, help answer those questions, or even another church in our network that maybe is implementing some of these strategies that can help answer your questions as well. We absolutely are convinced that the gold of the network, the real resource of the network, is the network itself. It's other like-minded leaders that are trying things, that are working on things, and they can tell you what's working, what's not working. So if you have any questions, we would love to connect you with someone else in the network that's working on these strategies, like Clint and others as well. So, hey guys, thank you so much for your time. Clint, Ryan, thanks for your time, and look forward to seeing everybody next month on our webinar. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you too.